My name is Finnian Calloway. I'm 38 years old and live in New York. Before everything happened, I was a sales executive. You know that type of person who lives for work? It was me. My life revolved around goals, reports, and endless meetings. I thought I had everything under control, that I was on the right path to success. My wife, Amelia, is an incredible woman, always patient, always supporting me. We had a comfortable house in the suburbs, 2 cars in the garage, and plans for the future. From the outside, it seemed like we had the perfect life. But the truth is that I was losing control. The fitness market, in which our company operated, began to slow down in early 2011. Suddenly, those goals that I always achieved with ease became mountains that were impossible to climb. The pressure was constant, as if I were carrying the world on my shoulders. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was withdrawing from everything and everyone. Amelia tried to talk to me, help me, but I pushed her away. "It's just a phase," I said. "It will pass." But it didn't happen. Sleepless nights have become routine. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about strategies, going over presentations, beating myself up for every little mistake. My mental health was in shambles, but I refused to admit it. After all, I was Finnian Calloway, the guy who always found a way, who never failed. Admitting that I needed help felt like a defeat. But there came a point that I could no longer ignore. That's when I decided to seek medical help. At that time, I had no idea how my life was about to change. I didn't know that I would soon go through an experience that would completely transform my view of the world, life, and death, an experience that would make me question everything I believed was important. If someone had told me at that moment that I was about to have a near-death experience, I probably would have laughed. Near-death experiences were things that happened to other people, not me. I was too busy living to think about death. But life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it? And that's exactly what happened to me. A series of events that started with a simple doctor's appointment and ended with, well, something I still have trouble describing. This is my story. The story of how I died and came back. Everything started to fall apart in April 2011. The market was in free fall, and our company was feeling the impact. Sales goals that once seemed challenging but achievable were now like trying to climb Everest in flip-flops. I spent sleepless nights, turning over spreadsheets, trying to find a magical solution that would save our team. The office, which was once a place of enthusiasm and energy, now felt like a battlefield. Each meeting was a new defeat. Each report brought bad news. At home, things were no better. I arrived late, exhausted, often bringing work with me. Amelia tried to talk to make me slow down, but I wouldn't listen. "It's just a difficult time," I repeated, more to myself than to her. "I'm going to turn it around." But the truth is, I was sinking. The stress was constant, like an annoying ringing in my ears that never stopped. I started having terrible headaches. My stomach was always upset. I could barely eat. One night, after another frustrating day at work, I was sitting in the living room, staring into space. Amelia sat next to me and took my hand. "Finn," she said softly, "you need help." I wanted to argue, to say that everything was under control, but the words didn't come out. For the first time, I really looked at myself and saw what was happening. I saw the deep, dark circles under my eyes, the shaking hands, the weight I had lost. I saw the fear in Amelia's eyes. It was at that moment that I realized I couldn't go on like this. Something had to change. The next day, I called to make an appointment with a doctor. Dr. Malcolm Porter had a good reputation, and I got an appointment for the following week. While waiting for the day of my appointment, I tried to focus on work, but it was difficult. My mind was a mess, jumping from worry to worry. When I finally sat down in Dr. Porter's office, I felt strangely relieved. He listened patiently to me as I vented about the stress, the anxiety, the sleepless nights. I talked about the pressure at work, about how I constantly felt on the verge of failure. Dr. Porter asked a few questions, took notes, and then looked at me seriously. "Finnian," he said, What you're going through is more common than you might think. Many people in high-pressure positions face similar problems. The good news is that we can treat it. He prescribed me a mood stabilizer. This will help balance things out, he explained. It should decrease anxiety and improve your sleep. But remember, this is just part of the treatment. You also need to make changes to your lifestyle. I left the office with the prescription in hand, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. On the one hand, it was good to have an action plan. On the other hand, the idea of depending on medication scared me a little. What if they changed who I was? What if they affected my performance at work? But I knew I needed to try something. For the sake of my health, for the sake of my marriage, I needed to change. So that night, with Amelia by my side, I took the first pill. Little did I know that that little pill would be the catalyst for the most extraordinary and transformative experience of my life. In the first few days after starting treatment, I noticed some subtle changes. The crushing weight of anxiety felt a little lighter, like someone had lifted a small stone from a mountain I was carrying. I was able to sleep a little better, although I still woke up in the middle of the night, worrying about work. Amelia noticed the difference. "Your eyes seem clearer," she commented at breakfast one day. I smiled, wanting to believe things were getting better. At work, I was able to concentrate a little more, although the pressure was still intense. On the third day, something strange started to happen. I was having dinner with Amelia when I felt a discomfort in my stomach. It wasn't a big deal, so I didn't comment. But throughout the night, the feeling got worse. It was like my stomach was churning, protesting something. I went to bed early, hoping a good night's sleep would do the trick. But sleep didn't come. I lay there, restless, feeling my body getting heavier and heavier. Fatigue hit me like a wave, leaving me exhausted, but at the same time unable to sleep. Around midnight, I got up to go to the bathroom. That's when everything got drastically worse. Suddenly, I felt like I couldn't breathe properly. It was like my lungs had forgotten how to work. I tried to call Amelia, who was in the next room, but my voice wouldn't come through. Panic took over me. My heart was beating so loudly I could hear it in my ears. My legs felt weak, and before I knew it, I was lying on the bathroom floor. The feeling of suffocation was overwhelming. Every breath was a struggle. At that moment, I was absolutely certain that I was dying. I thought about Amelia, about how she would find me there, cold and lifeless. I thought about work, about all the things I left unfinished. How ironic, I thought, to die just when I was trying to improve my health. And then, something incredible happened. Suddenly the pain and discomfort disappeared. It was as if my body had turned off all its sensors. I felt an indescribable lightness, as if I were floating. That's when I realized I could see my own body, lying on the bathroom floor. At first, I was terrified. How was this possible? Was I dead? But the fear soon gave way to a feeling of peace and serenity that I had never experienced before. It was as if the entire weight of the world had been lifted from my shoulders. I looked at my body once again. It seemed so small, so fragile. All the worries that consumed me, the work, the debts, the status, seemed insignificant now. I realized I was being pulled upward, away from my room, away from my house, away from my life. I don't know how long I was in that state. It could have been seconds or hours. Time seemed to have no meaning. I was aware, more aware than I had ever been, but in a completely different way. He was no longer Finnian Calloway, the stressed-out executive. It was just me, pure and simple. As I moved away from my body, I felt a presence around me. It wasn't something I could see or hear, but something I just knew was there. It was comforting, welcoming. For the first time in my life, I truly felt at peace. It was then that I saw a light. It was like nothing I had ever seen before. It was bright but not dazzling, warm but not too hot. It was as if the light itself was alive, pulsing with energy and love. And I knew with a certainty I can't explain that I should go towards it. As I moved toward the light, I realized that I was leaving behind not just my body, but my entire earthly life. And surprisingly, I was okay with that. There was no fear, there was no regret. Just a feeling that I was going where I was supposed to go. Little did I know that this journey was just beginning, and that what I would experience next would forever change my understanding of life, death, and everything in between. As I approached the light, it began to take shape. It was no longer just a diffuse glow, but something more defined. And then suddenly it was before me. An immense golden gate. It was the most magnificent thing I have ever seen. The gate seemed to be made of pure gold, but it was no ordinary gold. It was as if each particle was alive, pulsing with its own energy. Light emanated from it in soft waves, creating a spectacle of colors I didn't even know existed. I stood there, amazed, trying to absorb every detail. The gate was decorated with intricate patterns that seemed to tell stories. As I looked, the patterns seemed to move and change as if they were alive. It was mesmerizing. It was then that I realized I wasn't alone. Around me, others, well, I don't know if I can call them people. They were more like essences, each shining with their own unique light. They moved towards the gate, without rushing, as if they had all the time in the world. There was no fear or anxiety there. Instead, there was a sense of anticipation, like children waiting to open Christmas presents. I felt connected to these other souls in a way I had never experienced before. It was as if we could communicate without words, sharing emotions and thoughts directly. As I watched, I noticed that some souls walked right through the gate, while others seemed to hesitate. I wondered what determined who got in and who stayed. Would I be allowed in? As I approached the gate, I felt an irresistible pull. It was as if something on the other side was calling me, promising answers to questions I didn't even know I had. My entire life on Earth, my work, my worries, even my identity as Finnian Calloway, seemed so far away now, almost like a dream I had just woken up from. When I finally reached the gate, I hesitated for a moment. I looked back, thinking about Amelia, about the life I was leaving behind. But the pull was too strong to resist. With one last look at the path that brought me there, I took a step forward. Walking through the gate was indescribable. It was like diving into an ocean of light and love. For a moment, I felt like I was dissolving, losing my individuality and becoming part of something much bigger. It was scary and wonderful at the same time. And then, as quickly as it started, it was over. I found myself in a space that defied all the laws of physics I knew. There were no walls, no floor, no ceiling, at least not in the conventional sense. It was as if I were floating in a void, but a void full of possibilities. The light was everywhere, soft and welcoming. It didn't come from a specific source. It simply existed. And in that light, I could see, well, everything. It was as if all the information in the universe was there, within my reach. Suddenly, a chair appeared in front of me. It was no ordinary chair. It seemed to be made of the same light that surrounded me. Without thinking twice, I sat down. The moment I did this, a wave of peace enveloped me. It was a feeling so deep it almost hurt. All the worries, fears, and anxieties I carried just disappeared. I stood there, taking it all in. Time didn't make sense in that place. I could have sat for minutes or for centuries. It made no difference. I was completely present, more alive than I had ever felt when I was, well, alive. It was then that I realized I wasn't alone. Other souls were there, some close, others far away. I didn't see them with my eyes. Did I still have eyes? But I felt them. It was a deep connection, as if we were all part of a large organism. At that moment, I understood something fundamental. There were no secrets there. Each soul was an open book with all its experiences, thoughts, and feelings exposed. And the most incredible thing? There was no trial, just unconditional understanding and acceptance. I started to reflect on my life. I saw my moments of joy, but also those of anger and frustration. I saw the times I was kind and the times I was cruel. I saw my successes at work, but I also saw how those successes often came at the expense of my relationships and my mental health. It was like watching a movie of my life, but not as a passive spectator. I could feel every emotion, relive every moment. The difference was that now I saw everything with a clarity I never had before. I realized how many times I had been driven by fear of failing, fear of not being good enough, fear of losing control. I saw how this fear had led me to make decisions that hurt myself and others. But the most surprising? I didn't feel guilty. There was no condemnation there, just a deep understanding that every experience, every choice, had been a necessary part of my journey. As I pondered all of this, I felt a presence approaching. It was different from other souls, older, wiser. Instinctively, I knew. He was my spiritual mentor. The presence of my spiritual mentor was comforting, like a warm hug on a cold day. It didn't have a defined shape. It was more like a concentration of light and energy. But somehow I knew he was smiling at me. "Welcome, Finnian," I heard, not with my ears, but directly in my consciousness. The voice was gentle, full of understanding and wisdom. I had so many questions, so many things I wanted to understand. But before he could formulate any of them, the mentor began to speak. "You sought control of your life on earth, but forgot that true strength comes from connecting with others," he said. His words reverberated through me, touching a deep truth that I had always known but had forgotten. I thought about all the times I isolated myself, focused only on work and success. How many connection opportunities had I missed? How many times had I pushed Amelia, my friends, my family away, thinking I was doing what was best? The mentor continued. "Many souls arrive here carrying the weight of difficult lives. Some depart in tragic ways, accidents, illnesses, even by choice. But here, there is no condemnation, only understanding and love." These words touched me deeply. I thought about all the times I judged others, that I considered them weak because they couldn't handle the pressure. Now I saw it. Each person was fighting their own battle, carrying their own burden. But why? I asked. Why so much pain? Why so much suffering? The mentor seemed to ponder for a moment before responding. "Suffering, Finnian, is the fire that forges the soul. It is through challenges that we grow, that we learn to love, forgive, understand. Each experience, no matter how painful it may be, is an opportunity for evolution." I reflected on my own life. The difficulties at work, the constant pressure, the stress that got me to this point. Did it all have a purpose? It was hard to accept, but at the same time it made sense in a way I had never considered before. The mentor continued. "People you consider good, those who carry a special light, often attract the most challenges. Not because they are being punished, but because they have the ability to transform that suffering into something beautiful, something that can inspire and help the others." I thought about Amelia, how she always seemed to find the positive in things, even in the most difficult times. Was that what the mentor meant? But what about those who give up? I asked, thinking about the news of suicides that always disturbed me. The mentor's energy seemed to surround me with even more affection. Even these souls are welcomed with love and understanding. Here, they find the peace they could not find on earth. And often they choose to return to try again to learn the lessons they could not learn before. I was silent, taking it all in. It was such a different perspective from everything I had believed until then. All my life I had sought success, thinking it would bring me happiness and fulfillment. Now I saw that true wealth was in the connections we make, in the love we give and receive, in the lessons we learn through hardship. "What now?" I finally asked. "What happens to me?" The mentor seemed to smile again. "That, my dear Finnian, is a choice for you." The mentor's words echoed in my consciousness. "It's your choice." I was perplexed. A choice? Did I have options? As if reading my thoughts, and perhaps he actually could, the mentor explained, "Yes, Finnian. You can choose to remain here on this plane of existence where all is peace and understanding, or you can return to your life on Earth." The idea of going back scared me. Go back to the stress, the pressure, all those worries that now seem so small and insignificant. Why would anyone choose this? But before I could express these thoughts, the mentor showed me something. It was as if a window had opened in my mind, and through it, I could see Amelia. She was sitting next to my hospital bed holding my hand. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. She whispered something I couldn't hear, but I could feel the love and desperation in her words. The sight broke my heart. How could I leave her like this? How could I abandon her when she needed me most? "She needs you," the mentor said softly. "But that's not all. Think about all you've learned here, all the understanding you've gained. If you come back, you'll have the opportunity to apply that knowledge to make a difference in the lives of those around you." I thought about my coworkers, always under so much pressure. I thought about my subordinates, who I often pushed too hard without really understanding their struggles. I thought about my family, my friends, all the people I could help with this new perspective. But, I asked hesitantly, what if I forget all this when I get back? What if I go back to being the same Finnian I was before? The mentor laughed softly. "You will never be the same, Finnian. This experience is a part of you now. Even if you don't remember all the details, the essence of what you learned here will remain with you." I was silent for a long time, pondering. The peace and understanding I felt here was tempting. Part of me wanted to stay, to soak in that light forever. But another part, a part that was growing every moment, knew what needed to be done. "I want to go back," he finally said. "I want to try again. I want to do better this time." The mentor seemed to radiate approval and pride. "It's a brave choice, Finnian. It won't be easy, but remember, you are never alone. We will always be here, guiding and supporting you, even if you can't see or hear us directly." I nodded, feeling a mixture of determination and apprehension. How do I do this? How do I get back? "Close your eyes," instructed the mentor. "Focus on your physical body. Feel the connection between your soul and your body. It may feel difficult at first, but trust the process." I did as he instructed. At first I felt nothing but the peace that surrounded me. But then, slowly, I began to feel a tug. It was as if an invisible thread was pulling me back. "Remember, Finnian," I heard the mentor's voice, now sounding distant. "You are loved. You matter. And you have the power to make a difference." With these words echoing in my consciousness, I gave in to the pull. The light around me began to dim, and I felt like I was falling into a long, dark tunnel. The journey back was just beginning, and I had no idea what challenges awaited me. The fall through the dark tunnel seemed to take an eternity. It was as if I were passing through layers and layers of existence, each one denser and heavier than the last. The peace and lightness that I felt on the spiritual plane were being replaced by more familiar sensations: heaviness, limitation, discomfort. When I finally reached what seemed like the end of the journey, I hit a wall. It was as if there was a veil between me and my physical body, an almost impenetrable membrane. I tried to walk through it, but it was like trying to fit into a spacesuit several sizes too small. I was panicked. What if I couldn't come back? What if you were stuck in this limbo, neither on the spiritual nor on the physical plane? I tried to calm down, remembering the mentor's words. "Trust the process," he had said. But it was so difficult. It was then that I heard a familiar voice. Not with my physical ears, which weren't working yet, but somewhere deep in my consciousness. He was the mentor. "Finnian," he called softly. "Don't fight it. Accept it. Your body is adjusting to your surroundings. It's like waking up from a long sleep. It takes time." I tried to follow his advice, I stopped forcing it in and instead tried to tune into my body. I began to feel, very vaguely, the contours of my physical form. It was strange, like wearing clothes you haven't worn in a long time. Focus on the point between your eyebrows, the mentor instructed. The third eye, as some call it. It is a point of connection between the physical and the spiritual. I did as he said. At first I didn't feel anything, but then, slowly, I started to feel a kind of tingling in that area. It was subtle at first, but it got stronger. Suddenly, I felt as if an electric current was running through my entire body. It was painful, but at the same time, it made me feel alive in a way I hadn't felt in, well, I don't know how long it had been. My senses began to return, one by one. First, the touch. I felt the rough hospital sheets against my skin. Then, the sense of smell. The smell of disinfectant and medicine filled my nostrils. Then the audition. The constant beeping of machines around me, the distant murmur of voices in the hallway. The taste came next, bringing with it the metallic taste in my mouth. And finally, with great effort, I managed to open my eyes. The light was blinding. I blinked several times, trying to focus. Little by little, the hospital room took shape around me, and there, sitting next to me, holding my hand, was Amelia. His eyes widened when he realized I was awake. "Finn?" she called, her voice shaking with emotion. "Oh my God, Finn!" I tried to speak, but my throat was too dry. I only managed to make a hoarse sound. Amelia immediately grabbed a glass of water with a straw and brought it to my lips. The cool liquid running down my throat was the best feeling in the world. What happened?" I finally managed to ask, my voice still hoarse and weak. Amelia squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her face. "You had a severe allergic reaction to the medicine, Finn. When I found you in the bathroom and I thought, oh, Finn, I thought I lost you." She sobbed, unable to continue. I wanted to hug her, comfort her, tell her everything was okay now. But my body was still too weak to do more than lightly squeeze his hand. A doctor entered the room, attracted by the commotion. He smiled when he saw me awake. "Welcome back, Mr. Calloway. You gave us quite a scare." As he checked my vitals and asked routine questions, my mind wandered. I wanted to tell them about what I had experienced, about the Golden Gate, the spiritual mentor, the lessons I learned. But the words seemed inadequate, too small to describe something so vast and profound. Plus, a part of me worried they wouldn't believe it, that they attributed everything to hallucinations caused by a lack of oxygen in the brain or something like that. So for now, I decided to keep this experience to myself. The following days were a blur of tests, doctor visits, and moments of profound exhaustion. My body was recovering, but slowly. Every movement was an effort, every breath a reminder of how close I came to leaving forever. But amidst all this physical exhaustion, there was a mental clarity I had never experienced before. It was as if a veil had been lifted from my eyes, allowing me to see the world and my life from a completely new perspective. I observed the nurses who took care of me, noticing for the first time the tiredness in their eyes, but also the compassion in their gestures. I saw the dedication of the doctors, working long hours to save lives. And most of all, I saw Amelia, her strength and unconditional love shining like a beacon in the darkness. A week later, when I was finally released from the hospital, I knew nothing would be the same. Not because the world had changed, but because I had changed. The experience I had beyond life had planted a seed in me, a seed of transformation that was just beginning to sprout. The first few days at home were a challenge. My body was still healing, and the smallest task seemed to require monumental effort. But at the same time, there was a new energy inside me, a fire that hadn't been there before. Amelia was always by my side, taking care of me with a dedication that moved me deeply. I tried to explain to her what had happened, the journey I had taken beyond life. But the words seemed too small to capture the magnitude of the experience. "It's like I died and was reborn," I told her one night, as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Everything seems different now, more alive, brighter. She looked at me with a mixture of concern and curiosity. Do you think it was real? It couldn't have been a dream or something caused by the medications? I shook my head, smiling softly. I understand why you would think that, but Amelia, it was more real than anything I've ever experienced. It changed everything. And it really had changed. As the days passed and I grew stronger, I began to notice profound changes in my outlook and attitudes. Work, which had once been the center of my existence, now felt like, well, just work. Important, yes, but not to the point of sacrificing my health, my relationships, my peace of mind. When I returned to the office 2 weeks later, my colleagues noticed the difference immediately. I was calmer, more patient. The crises that once left me on the verge of a nervous breakdown now seemed like small obstacles to overcome. "Finn, you look different," my boss commented during our first meeting. "It seems more centered. What happened to you in that hospital?" I smiled, knowing I couldn't explain it completely. "Let's just say I had a change of perspective," I replied. "I realized that there are more important things in life than quarterly reports." He looked surprised, maybe even a little worried. But over time, as they saw how my new attitude positively affected not only my work but that of the entire team, people began to accept and even admire the change. At home, my relationship with Amelia blossomed in ways I had never imagined possible. I started to really listen to her, to value every moment we spent together. Our conversations became deeper, more meaningful. One night, as we were preparing dinner together, something I'd never had time to do before, Amelia surprised me with a question. "Finn," she said hesitantly, you think you saw God? When did you have that experience?" I stopped what I was doing, reflecting on the question. "I don't know if I can call what I saw God, at least not in the traditional sense," I finally replied. "But I felt a presence, something greater than I can describe, something full of love and understanding." Amelia nodded thoughtfully. "You know, since you've been back, sometimes I look at you and see, I can't explain it. It's like there's a light in you that wasn't there before." His words touched me deeply. I knew exactly what she meant because I felt this light inside me. It was the constant reminder of what I had experienced, of the unconditional love I had felt on the other side. And with that light came a new purpose. I knew I came back for a reason, not just to live my life but to make a difference in the lives of others, to share, in some way, the love and understanding he had experienced. I started looking for ways to help others. I volunteered at a local shelter on the weekends. I began mentoring young professionals at our company, sharing not only technical knowledge but also lessons about balance and well-being. At work, I implemented changes that aimed to reduce stress and improve employees' quality of life. I instituted meditation breaks, encouraged flexible working hours, and even convinced management to create a decompression space in the office. Initially, there was resistance. Some colleagues thought I had softened after the incident. Others feared that these changes would negatively affect our productivity. But over time, the results spoke for themselves. The work environment improved, turnover decreased, and surprisingly, our productivity increased. At home, Amelia and I began exploring spiritual practices together. We meditated together every morning, a habit that became precious to both of us. We started attending study groups about near-death experiences and spirituality. Although Amelia still had questions about my experience, she was open and curious. A year after my near-death experience, I decided to share my story publicly for the first time. It was during a company leadership retreat. I was nervous, fearing what my colleagues would think. But I knew it was important to share. I told you everything. The allergic reaction, the feeling of leaving my body, the encounter with the Golden Gate, the lessons I learned from my spiritual mentor. I talked about the peace I felt, the unconditional love I experienced, and I explained how it had changed my perspective on life, work, and relationships. When I finished, the silence in the room was palpable. For a moment, I feared I had made a mistake. Then, to my surprise, people started opening up. Colleagues shared their own struggles with stress and anxiety. Some even revealed that they had had similar experiences, but never had the courage to talk about it. That moment marked a significant change not only in my life, but in the culture of our company. We started talking more openly about mental health, spirituality, and the meaning of life beyond work. Of course, not everything was perfect. There were days when I found myself falling back into old habits, times when stress threatened to overwhelm me again, but now I had the tools to deal with it. Most importantly, I had a new perspective that allowed me to see these difficulties as opportunities for growth. Amelia noticed the changes more than anyone. "You're a different person now, Finn," she told me one day. "Kinder, more present. It's like you found a peace you've been looking for a long time." She was right. I had changed. The near-death experience hadn't just shown me a glimpse of what lies beyond this life. It had taught me how to live this life better. Today, 5 years after that fateful night in the bathroom, I look back and see how far I've come. I'm not perfect. Far from it. I still make mistakes. I still have moments of doubt and fear. But I carry with me the memory of that light, that unconditional love that I experienced. And each day, I try to bring a little of that light to the world around me, whether through an act of kindness, a word of encouragement, or simply being there for someone in need. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll have another chance to glimpse what lies beyond this life. But I know this. Every moment is precious. Every interaction is an opportunity to spread love. And in the end, that's what really matters. My near-death experience taught me that life is more than just existing. It's about connecting, loving, growing. It's about finding the divine in the everyday, eternity in the present moment. And so, I continue my journey, no longer fearing death, but fully embracing life, because now I know that death is not the end, it's just the beginning of a new adventure. As the years passed, the intensity of my near-death experience did not lessen. On the contrary, it seemed like each day brought new understandings, new ways of applying what I learned on that journey beyond life. One of the most profound changes was in my relationship with time. Before, I was always running, always thinking about the next objective, the next goal to be achieved. Now, I have found a new appreciation for the present moment. I started practicing what I call timeless moments, mindful pausing during the day to simply be, to observe and appreciate what's around me. Sometimes it's just noticing the taste of my breakfast. Other times, it's stopping to actually hear a coworker laugh or feeling the breeze on my face while taking a walk. These practices may seem simple, even trivial, but to me, they are constant reminders of the interconnectedness of all things, of the beauty and miracle of existence. Truths that I experienced so profoundly during my near-death experience. At work, my new approach continued to bear fruit. Our company has become known not only for its financial results, but for its culture of well-being and consciousness. We started attracting talent who were looking for more than just a paycheck, people who wanted to be part of something meaningful. At home, my relationship with Amelia blossomed in ways I never could have imagined. Our connection deepened, not just on an emotional level, but also on a spiritual level. We began exploring meditation and mindfulness practices together, and even took a trip to India to study with spiritual masters. But not everything was easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if I had really experienced what I thought I had experienced. The rational mind would sometimes try to dismiss it all as a hallucination caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain. In these moments, I remembered my spiritual mentor's words, "Trust the process." And I clung to the certainty I felt deep within my being, the certainty that what I experienced was real, more real than anything I had ever experienced before. One of the most rewarding things was being able to share my story with others who have gone through similar experiences. I started joining support groups for people who had near-death experiences, and I was surprised by how many similar stories I heard. There were differences, of course. Not everyone has seen a golden gate or found a spiritual mentor. But the central themes were always the same. A sense of deep peace, a feeling of unconditional love, and a fundamental change in the way we view life and death. These conversations helped me process my own experience in new ways. Each story I heard added a new layer of understanding, a new perspective on what I had experienced. One of the questions I was most frequently asked was, "Are you still afraid of death?" The answer always surprised me a little. No, I'm not afraid of death, but I have a much greater respect for life. Because that's what my near-death experience really taught me. Not just that there is something beyond this life, but that this life, here and now, is incredibly precious. Every moment is an opportunity. Every interaction is a chance to spread love and understanding. 10 years have passed since that night in the bathroom. 10 years since I died and came back. And each day I feel like I'm just beginning to unwrap the gift I received from that experience. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll have another chance to glimpse what lies beyond the veil before my time truly comes. But I know this. I am grateful for every day, every breath, every chance to make a difference, no matter how small. And when the time comes to leave again, I know I'll be ready. Not with fear or resistance, but with acceptance and maybe even a little curiosity. Because now I know that death is not the end. It's just the beginning of a new journey. As I reflect on my journey over the past 10 years since that fateful night that changed everything, I realize that my near-death experience was just the beginning. It was as if a door had been opened, revealing a vast universe of possibilities and understandings that I didn't even know existed. One of the most profound lessons I've learned is about the nature of love. Before, I saw love as something limited, something you gave to a few people close to you, family, close friends, maybe a few favorite coworkers. But after experiencing that unconditional love from the other side, I realized that love is actually the very essence of the universe. Now I try to practice this universal love in my daily life. It's not easy, especially when dealing with difficult people or stressful situations, but I constantly remind myself that every person, no matter how unpleasant they may seem on the surface, has within them the same divine spark that I experienced on my journey. Another big change was my understanding of the purpose of life. Before, I was so focused on achieving goals, on successful in the conventional sense. Now I see that the true purpose is to grow, learn, and above all, love. Every challenge, every difficulty is an opportunity for spiritual evolution. This doesn't mean I abandoned my ambitions or stopped working hard. On the contrary, I feel more motivated than ever. But the motivation now comes from a different place. It's no longer about proving my worth or accumulating wealth. It's about how I can use my talents and resources to make a positive difference in the world. One question I am often asked is whether I would recommend a near-death experience to others. It's a complicated question. On the one hand, the experience was deeply transformative and beneficial for me. On the other hand, it was frightening and potentially fatal. It's not something I would want anyone to go through. What I say is this: it is not necessary to almost die to live fully. The lessons I learned about love, compassion, the interconnectedness of all things are available to all of us, here and now. We just need to be open to them. Amelia, my wife, has been a crucial part of this journey. Your acceptance, support, and willingness to explore these ideas with me has been invaluable. Our relationship has deepened in ways I never could have imagined. We discover an intimacy that is not just physical or emotional, but spiritual. At work, I continue to see the fruits of my transformation. Our company is not only financially successful, but it has become a place where people truly enjoy working. We see less burnout, more creativity, more collaboration, and the most rewarding thing is seeing how these changes spread. Employees taking these ideas to their families, their social circles, creating a ripple effect of positivity. Of course, not everything is perfect. I still have bad days. I still make mistakes. I still catch myself sometimes falling into old thought patterns. But the difference is that now I have a bigger perspective. I can see these difficulties for what they really are: opportunities for growth, chances to practice the love and compassion I experienced on the other side. One of the most surprising things over the last few years has been the number of people who have approached me to share their own spiritual experiences. Many had never spoken about it before, fearing they would be ridiculed or not believed. Being able to offer an empathetic ear, a safe space for these people to share their stories, has been incredibly rewarding. Sometimes I ask myself, why me? Why was I chosen to have this experience? But then I remember something my spiritual mentor told me. There are no chosen ones. We are all equally loved, equally important in the grand scheme of things. My experience doesn't make me special. It just gives me a greater responsibility to share what I've learned. So that's what I try to do every day. Share the love, the understanding, the peace I experienced. Not preaching or trying to convert anyone, but simply living these truths to the best of my ability, being kinder, more present, more compassionate. And in the end, that's what it's all about, isn't it? It's not about having all the answers or fully understanding the mysteries of the universe. It's about living each day with love, with gratitude, with the awareness that we are all part of something bigger. My near-death experience showed me a glimpse of what lies beyond this life. But most importantly, it taught me how to live this life better, here and now. And for that, I will be eternally grateful.